And to nobody's surprise, we're putting the 2020 Olympics in the spotlight this week. My next guest has covered every Olympic Games since 1992. And although the pandemic has stopped him from making the trip over to Tokyo this year, it has not stopped him from bringing people the latest updates on the biggest events. Take a listen to just some of his latest interview with Craig Reedy, who led the International Olympic Committee that evaluated Tokyo's bid to host the Games 8 years ago.
Is it shocking to you to see the way the Tokyo Olympics have turned out after reviewing the bid at the early stages and getting to know it as it was? Tokyo to deliver the Olympics with a safe pair of hands.
I don't think I'd use the word shocking. In a sense, it's heartbreaking. Because they were the best of three bids. They were better than Madrid. They were better than Istanbul. They wanted to run the games to back up the fact that they still use some of the facilities that they built and maintained since 1964. We certainly hope that we will not suffer this kind of pandemic ever again in such a way that it completely destroys sport.
All right, joining me now, Ed Hula, host of Around the Rings podcast. Ed, good to see you. Thanks for joining us. How tough is it to sit home? Of course, how tough is it to sit home like all of us plebeians and watch the Olympics from your couch versus the exciting prospect of watching it in person as you've done for so long now?
Well, first of all, I have to say that it is giving me the experience for the first time of watching the Olympics through NBC. Usually when I'm in the host city, I'm watching it on the host broadcast network or live in person in the venue. So I'm getting my NBC baptism here with these games. But it is a strange experience. I want to be going here and there. I know about press conferences that are happening or people to talk to. But then I think I wouldn't be able to go find these people under these bubble-like conditions in which we would have to live in Tokyo, and which my colleagues are having to deal with. So there are some fences that would make my ordinary prowling about Tokyo rather difficult.
Yeah, I mean, as we know from some of our own colleagues here at MSNBC and NBC News, many of them have a lot of restrictions on them as to where they can go and when they can be there and who they can talk to. And so it's making it a lot harder, obviously, to cover the Olympic Games in which we normally do. I want to talk a little bit about the piece that we just played with Craig, the conversation that you were just having. And I was actually curious as to why you think he talked about how this pandemic has, in fact, destroyed sports. Do you agree with him? And what do you think he meant by that?
Well, the way it has made it just impossible for sport to operate under the old way. I mean, clearly the pandemic is going to change business models, change the way things are carried out, but it killed sport. The pandemic for the past year really did bring a halt to many Olympic sports. These people who are competing, these Olympians in Tokyo, haven't had a chance to face each other in international competition for more than a year and a half. And that sounds like killing sport to me. And I think he's also reacting to the absence of spectators in the stadiums in Tokyo.
Right.
It is a very hollow experience to see that and to be in that stadium and be the only like marbles rattling around in a big old can. Very strange experience. And it's not what sport's all about. Sports is about something.
Yeah. Do you think, Ed, that some of these athletes that are just incredible are at times not able to perform at their ultimate capacity because their training up until this point has at times been stunted because of this pandemic, because of the shutdowns, because of the lack of kind of, teamwork, camaraderie, exposure to coaches due to COVID?
Yeah, clearly not the most ideal circumstances for many sports. Perhaps for some individual sports, that additional time has allowed for more training, more concentration. But I think for the most part, it's very difficult for these athletes to get back in sync, back in tune after all they've had to go through with COVID. And it's still not settled down yet. There still are not complete international calendars in many of these Olympic sports moving forward because so many things have been postponed or canceled, put forward to next year. So it's not back to normal yet by any means, and I'm just kind of worried about what's going to happen with the spread of these variations in the coronavirus, the complications they're going to pose down the road.
Right. Absolutely. I think a lot of folks are worried about that. But I will say for now, as of this morning, I was super happy to be watching the Olympics with my kids, watching skateboarding actually this morning with my 4.5-year-old who does love to learn how to skateboard. Yeah, some pretty good stuff there. And of course, watching the 400 IM, the USA winning gold there. Ed Hula, thank you as always. Great to talk to you this afternoon.
Yasmin,
appreciate
great
it.
to
Be sure to tune in
Thanks.
to Ed on. Of course, tune into Ed on Around the Rings podcast on SoundCloud to get your daily updates on the Olympic Games.